What's up, you guys? Welcome to the video. Today is Monster Jam Collection video. Happy 2025, the 2nd of 2025. So we'll go ahead and start the video with Gears Blue Thunder. Now this thing. Space Gold chassis and wheels with white roll cage and tires with golden beacon to printing with Astro Treads. Moving on to Ice Grave Digger. Now this thing. Space blue chassis and wheels with white roll cage with clear blue tires with white beacon to printing with white ice treads. Moving on to Zombie Megalodon. Now this thing. Black chassis with red roll cage with green wheels, black beacon to printing with zombie glitter treads. Moving on to Galaxy's Monster Mutt Dalmatian. Now this thing. Cyan chassis, B-locks, and beacon to printing with black roll cage with clear black wheels with Galaxy glitter treads. Moving on to Fire Son of a Digger. Now this thing. Red chassis, orange chassis and wheels with yellow roll cage with orange red beacon to printing with yellow fire treads. Moving on to Hunter Max D. Now this thing. Silver gray chassis with brown roll cage with mahogany wheels and chrome beacon to printing with Hunter gray treads. Moving on to Gears Alien Invasion. Everything looks the same as Blue Thunder. Moving on to Ice Dragon. Everything looks the same as Grave Digger. Moving on to Zombie El Toro Loco. Now this thing. Black chassis with yellow roll cage with red wheels, black beacon to printing with zombie glitter treads. Moving on to Galaxy's Bakugan Dragonoid. Everything looks same as a Dalmatian. Moving on to Fire Great Clips Mohawk Warrior. Everything looks same as Son of a Digger. Moving on to Hunter Earthshaker. Now this thing. Gray chassis with black roll cage with brown wheels, mahogany wheels and chrome beacon to printing with Hunter glitter treads. Moving on to the Neo Galaxy Grave Digger. Now this thing. White chassis with dark pink roll cage with pink wheels, teal tires with white Pikachu printing. Moving on to the Nitro Gravedigger. Now this thing, pink chassis with black roll cage and tires with purple Pikachu printing and bead locks with yellow teal wheels. Moving on to Pikachu Customs Gravedigger. Now this thing, silver chassis and wheels with green roll cage and bead locks, Pikachu printed tires. Moving on to Pikachu Customs Gravedigger Orange. Now this thing, silver chassis with orange roll cage and wheels, Pikachu printed tires. Moving on to Pikachu Customs Gravedigger Red. Now this thing, silver chassis with red roll cage and wheels, Pikachu printed tires. Moving on to Pikachu Customs Gravedigger Purple. Now this thing, black chassis with purple roll cage, blue wheels, Pikachu printed tires. Moving on to Pikachu Customs Son of a Digger. Now this thing, silver chassis and wheels with blue roll cage with purple wheels, purple bead locks, Pikachu printed tires. Moving on to Pikachu Customs, the 30th Anniversary Gravedigger. Now this thing, chrome chassis with green roll cage with farm green wheels, Pikachu printed tires. Moving on to Pikachu Customs, the 40th Anniversary Gravedigger. Now this thing, chrome chassis with yellow roll cage, teal wheels, Pikachu printed tires. Moving on to Pikachu Customs Monster Mutt Dalmatian. Now this thing, red chassis with white roll cage and wheels, Pikachu printed tires. Moving on to Pikachu Customs Monster Mutt Golden Retriever. Now this thing, golden chassis and wheels with brown roll cage, Pikachu printed tires. Moving on to Pikachu Customs Bad News Travels Fast. Now this thing, orange chassis and beadlocks with brown, black roll cage, silver wheels, biggest printed tires. Moving on to BKT Customs Aftershock. Now this thing, yellow chassis and wheels with blue roll cage with BKT printed tires. Moving on to BKT Customs Iron Outlaw. Now this thing, red chassis and wheels with silver roll cage with BKT printed tires. Moving on to BKT Customs Kraken. Now this thing, bronze chassis with dirt brown roll cage with pink wheels, biggest printed tires. Moving on to BKT Customs Velociraptor. Now this thing, silver chassis with mahogany roll cage with black wheels, biggest printed tires. Moving on to BKT Customs Jurassic Attack. Now this thing, silver chassis with purple roll cage and wheels, biggest printed tires. Moving on to BKT Customs Northern Nightmare. Now this thing, silver chassis with red roll cage, orange wheels, biggest printed tires. Moving on to BKT Customs Blue Thunder. Now this thing, silver chassis with green roll cage and wheels, biggest printed tires. Moving on to BKT Customs Time Flies. Now this thing, silver chassis and roll cage with black wheels, biggest printed tires. Moving on to BKT Customs Lucas Stabilizer. Now this thing, silver chassis with black roll cage with red wheels, biggest printed tires. Moving on to BKT Customs Avenger. Now this thing, silver chassis with lime green roll cage and wheels, biggest printed tires. Moving on to BKT Customs El Toro Loco. Now this thing, black chassis with Silver roll cage, orange wheels, biggest printer tires. Moving on to Bigoty Custom Zombie. Now this thing. Maroon chassis with white roll cage and wheels, biggest printer tires. Moving on to Bigoty Customs Wolf's Head. Now this thing. Silver chassis with brown roll cage with black wheels, biggest printer tires. Moving on to Bigoty Customs Earthshaker. Now this thing. Silver chassis with yellow roll cage and wheels, biggest printer tires. Moving on to Bigoty Customs Dragon. Now this thing. Silver chassis with green roll cage and wheels, biggest printer tires. Moving on to Bigoty Customs Megalodon. Now this thing. Silver chassis and roll cage with aqua wheels, biggest printer tires. Moving on to Bigoty Customs Max D. Now this thing. Silver chassis with green roll cage and wheels, biggest printer tires. Moving on to Bigoty Customs Big Kahuna. Now this thing. Yellow chassis and wheels with black roll cage, biggest printer tires. And now, moving on to the original Gravedigger. Now this thing. Silver chassis with black roll cage and tires with white, yellow wheels. Moving on to the Gravedigger the Legend. Now this thing. Black chassis wheels and tires with black chassis roll cage and tires with silver wheels. Moving on to the Retro Gravedigger. Now this thing. Black chassis and tires with green roll cage and wheels. Moving on to Gravedigger number 7. Now this thing. Silver roll cage and wheels with green roll cage with flotation tires. Moving on to the Green Ghost Gravedigger. Now this thing also a silver chassis and wheels with green roll cage with flotation tires. Moving on to 1982, the original Gravedigger. Now this thing, vintage chassis with flotation tires with yellow wheels. Moving on to the 1984, the grain truck Gravedigger. Now this thing, vintage chassis with flotation tires with black wheels. Moving on to 1986, the Grandma Gravedigger. Now this thing, vintage chassis with flotation tires with brown wheels. Moving on to the green Nitro Neon Gravedigger. Now this thing, everything is all green except the wheels are white. Moving on to the blue Nitro Neon Son of a Digger. Now this thing, everything is all blue except the roll cage is all, except the wheels are all white. Moving on to the yellow Nitro Neon Earthshaker. Now this thing, yellow chassis and tires with black roll cage with white wheels. Moving on to the pink Nitro Neon Calavera. Everything is all pink. Moving on to the teal Nitro Neon Blue Thunder. Now this thing, teal chassis and wheels with brown roll cage and tires. Moving on to the lime green Nitro Neon Gravedigger. Now this thing, everything is all lime green except the roll cage is all black. Moving on to the 2024. Moving on to the farm green Nitro Neon Max T. Now this thing, farm green chassis and wheels with silver roll cage with yellow wheels. Moving on to the Agent Orange Nitro Neon Max T. Now this thing, Agent Orange chassis and wheels with silver roll cage with yellow wheels. Moving on to the orange Nitro Neon Max T. Now this thing, everything is all orange except the roll cage is all black. Moving on to the Nitro Neon, the green Nitro Neon Max T. Now this thing. Silver chassis with green roll cage and tires with black wheels. Moving on to the yellow Nitro Neon Max D. Now this thing. Silver chassis with yellow roll cage and tires with black wheels. Moving on to the purple Nitro Neon Max T. Now this thing. Everything is all purple except the roll cage is all white. Moving on to Custom Elementals Trucks Gravedigger. Now this thing. Purple chassis with black roll cage with green and yellow wheels on the left and orange and red wheels on the right with blue tires. Moving on, last but not least, to custom phased out Son of a Digger. Now this thing. White chassis with black roll cage with 2 red wheels, 1 black wheel and 1 white wheel with 2 white tires and 2 black tires. And that'll be it. Make sure you like, subscribe, or also you're turning the notifications to my YouTube page, Parker Wilson's Blinking at Amigos. Have a wonderful 2024. Goodbye. Wonderful hello 2025. Goodbye.